Hey guys, what's going on? It's Mark with Spiguyver Backpack, and thank you for joining me today. I'm out here in the local park, came out, set the tarp up, and it's been raining for the last couple of days. I've been wanting to get out and do a couple of videos, but the rain's just not been letting me. I decided it was a little bit of a lull in the storms rolling through. We've got another wave coming in, but while it was a little bit drier, I wanted to get out here, set up the tarp, and in my backpack right here, I have a hammock. Now, what I like doing, I love showing you guys new stuff, new hammocks. Now, this one isn't necessarily new. It's not new to the market by any means, but it's one that I have not had the chance to really test out, run through its paces, and tell you guys what I think about it. So in here, I have the Warbonnet Ridgerunner. Now, you guys know I've tested out the Warbonnet Blackbird XLC, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. Now, you can get comfortable in it, and there is a huge community out there that absolutely loves the XLC. I just wasn't one of them. I found it was a little bit finicky, hard to set up, and I had other hammocks that I could just set up and be comfortable in a whole lot quicker, a whole lot easier. And so it didn't work all that well for me, and I moved away from it. But I've had a lot of requests, people asking about the different bridge hammocks out there. Now, I have tested out one bridge hammock, and I'm gonna in the future do a much more thorough testing of it if Junebug Dawn will send it to me. But she had the big boy bridge that she put together that I thought was really comfortable, the little bit that I got to lay in it. So I have this Warbonnet Ridgerunner that Jordan Wright, one of the subscribers to the channel, somebody that follows and we have discussions from time to time, was gracious enough to send to me so that I could test out, try out, and I'm going to take it out this upcoming weekend. Rain Man and I have a trip out into the woods for a few nights, and I'm going to take it out with me and take it on a backpacking trip. So let's dig it out of here, get it set up, and we can start talking about it. Let's go. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what makes up this hammock system. So here is the actual hammock body, but also in here are the suspension and straps that go along with it. And then here are the spreader bars. So you have the smaller diameter for the foot end and the larger diameter for the head end, 3 pieces versus 2 pieces. And conveniently, they do stow within each other for a little bit of ease. Don't take up quite as much room when you're packing stuff up. So let's go ahead and get this thing set up and we'll take a look at it. So here we have the actual hammock, and it's a really cool design. It is a bridge hammock with the spreader bar a little bit wider on the head end than on the foot end, and I'll throw the dimensions right down here so you guys can see exactly how wide it is on each end. The bug net, right now there's some wind kind of coming in the end and puffing this up, but you can see the bug net attaches to the tree on the head end and then attaches to the suspension on the foot end. Now, you don't even need the foot end on in order for this to stay up off of you. This is actually the first time I've used it with the foot end attached, but I just wanted to show you guys exactly how this whole thing sets up. So this is the setup. It's a nice hammock. It's wide. I've got pretty wide shoulders for my height. This hammock will fit someone up to 6'6", and because it is the double layer, you can insert a pad in between, or you can use underquilts, and it'll support up to 250 pounds. Now, this is available now in 6 different colors, so you do have a lot more color choices than you had in the past. And it is a comfortable hammock. Now, what I will say is this is the flattest laying hammock I've ever been in. There are a lot out there right now that are claiming to be flat. This is really the gold standard when it comes to flat. Now, I've heard a lot of people say that over the years, and I just haven't had the chance to try one of these out to see just how flat it is. So let's go ahead and get in there, and I'll show you from the outside what it looks like, how flat it actually looks. So you can see from just being here just how flat the bottom is. You've got the saddlebags on either side right here that you can store stuff in while you're in there. But if you lift them up, you can see this thing lays really flat just hanging here, much more so than a gathered end, which really does form that banana shape. So let's get in it and see how that changes. Zipper runs all the way down through. So I'll open it up. I like to keep it on this side of the corner because it's a whole lot easier to get in and get it closed up. So there is a webbing strap that is sewn in on either side, and that's the reinforced area that you're supposed to grab onto in order to get in and out and reposition yourself while you're inside. You never want to grab the spreader bars because you could damage them, bend them, break them, and really compromise the strength of the hammock. You don't want to use the netting because that's not how you want to use it. So I like to just kind of grab it, sit in it, kind of move this back so it's out of the way a little bit. And honestly, if you've got this thing set up, right now it's at a great height where this thing is a good chair for camp. If I was to unzip the bug net all the way, you can really lean back in this and have it as a great camp chair. But, so I'm gonna go ahead and kick off my shoes to get inside. And I'll reach over and grab the other webbing strap just to kind of keep myself in. I'll reach up, grab that, pull this one down. Now here you can see from underneath as I'm laying in it just how flat this lay really truly is. Another really cool thing about this, now that I'm laying in here, is because of the way this is cut and it comes down, you can see right here, laying in here, I can see out both sides of the hammock. I can see, you know, up out of that end, up above me is all clear, but you have a lot more visibility in here. Because in a gathered end hammock, as you lay on the diagonal, one side, so if I was laying with my head right, foot left like I normally do in a gathered end, the left-hand side by my head really forms a wall that I can't see out of. And I've got to pull down kind of to look out my head side. But in here, with my head down, arm kind of behind, I can look out either side and just see what's out there, see what's going on. And especially when you have porch mode set up like I've got it set up here, if you were to do it on both sides, even pull the other side a little bit higher, you can definitely get a good view of the world and see what's going on. Getting out, just as easy. Just reach up, unzip it. Now, I will say it is a little bit tippy, and that's one of the complaints that people have, is that it's tippy. But I can tell you that once you get used to how you get in and out of this thing, so here we go, getting in, just kind of kicking my legs in. Even though it's a little bit tippy, once you're in it, you know, I can move around, get onto my side, no problem, roll back around this way, and you can see it's not tipping me out. One of the other things that I really was concerned or wondered about was, you know, sometimes, let me get this out of the way a little bit here. Sometimes when I'm at camp, I like to lay in my hammock and do breakfast, especially if it's a rainy morning. So I was wondering, can you actually do that from here? And, you know, if this was my pot and I'm able to work in it, you can. You can totally do it. Just kind of put your arm over that webbing strap and kind of lean out, and you can make it work. Does it feel tippy? Yeah, it feels a little bit weird when you first get in here and you first start doing this, but once you get used to it, I think it's gonna be just fine. And then from here, I could still just kind of lay back, keeping, you know, the entire world available to me right here. Reach out, do what I got to do. The one concern I would have is whether or not this is going to get anywhere near the flames. So I may want to do it back a little bit further or out a little bit further, just to kind of keep that from being an issue. Now, speaking about these saddlebags, if we're laying in here, this is a great area to store stuff. So I've got my phone and drop back right down in there, completely accessible from inside, no worries at all, able to get it. It's not super deep, so it's something you can really get into while you're in there without a problem. So there are concerns with the spreader bar, the points that are on the spreader bar being close to your tarp. Now I've got a pretty wide tarp here, and you can see down on the head end, if you look down there, it's actually not too far, and if you start swinging a little bit and leaning out, it gets really close to my tarp. So with those points, here you can see the point. People are concerned with those hitting the tarp and possibly ripping the tarp. And so Warbonnet has some added bumpers, that they call them, that go on to the ends where the spreader bar connect. Now what I've done is, this isn't my hammock and it didn't come with any of the bumpers, so I went and cut up a road bicycle tube, an inner tube, and disconnected the suspension, this Y suspension that goes all the way up and connects and has the hardware on it. I went ahead and disconnected it, ran some bike tubes down onto there, and so now I have some protection, just a little bit of protection there that keeps it from really worrying me if it comes up and hits the tarp. Now you've got a little bit of a rubbery surface there instead of a metal surface hitting the tarp. Now I had mentioned that you could use a sleeping pad with this because it's double layer, and here on the end you can see, actually with the wind blowing and lifting up the inner part, you can see all the way through out the head end. So you can see that you can use a sleeping pad, just slide it in there, and then once your weight is inside on top of it, it's not going to move anywhere. Really cool design. Because it's flat, it actually uses a sleeping pad really well. So one of the other questions I've had personally about a bridge hammock is, can you use a standard underquilt in conjunction with a bridge hammock? And so what I've got here is my Underground Quilts Zeppelin 20 degree. It was set up for a gathered end hammock. I went ahead, loosened the two ends, and then ran it over the top. Instead of having it underneath where it would bunch up, I ran it over the top of the spreader bar with the suspension. And now I can show getting in, get that out of the way, sit back in here a little bit. So I've got that Underground Quilts Zeppelin underquilt on here. Sitting down in here, I can now lay back in here, and because of the width of this quilt, I am completely wrapped up in it. It is head to foot, no gaps, no problem. I immediately feel the warmth as I'm laying in here. It's not being compressed underneath, so it's keeping the warmth in, and the width is actually a little bit wider than the hammock itself. And so if you had stuff in here, it's going to kind of bunch it up a little bit. So that's why an underquilt that's designed specifically for this may work a little bit better. But if you want to switch to this or try something like a bridge hammock out and you're not sure whether or not your underquilts will work, as long as you have adjustments on your underquilt, you absolutely can adjust it and get it to work. And man, it's only 60 degrees out here today. Like I said, it's been raining. The wind is blowing a little bit. You guys could see that. But I am toasty warm right now. Just the underquilt makes such a huge, huge difference. And the difference between an underquilt and using a pad, even though this is a double layer, you could slide a pad in there, no problem. The underquilt adds that comfort level. That factor is that there isn't something underneath you that's rigid or more rigid that kind of changes the way that the hammock lays. And that's why most people, once they go to an underquilt or try an underquilt, will never go back to a pad. Now there are exceptions to that. If you know that you may be swapping out between ground and hammock due to lack of trees or just the environment you're in, then maybe going with a double layer using a pad is the right way to go. You have to figure out what works best for you. So this really is a great hammock system. Now, one of the things I have not shown yet is you can unzip this all the way. A little bit difficult one-handed sitting in it, so I'm gonna go ahead and do this. Disconnect it from the two trees, or from the tree and the suspension. This whole piece down here, there is a pocket it can just wrap up into, and then there's some tie straps right here that you can just tie it up and keep it out of the way. So that's a cool feature. I'm gonna go ahead and put it back up and we'll come back and talk some more. So like I was saying, this is a nice hammock. I could not believe just how flat I get in here. But I've asked, is this a backpacking hammock? Is this something that you can take backpacking with you? And so I've thrown that question out there, and I've had some responses from a few people who use this hammock, and the responses have been about 50-50, with half the people saying yes, you can absolutely use it as a backpacking hammock, and the other half saying it's a little bit too heavy for a backpacking hammock. Now, I can see both sides of that. Depending on who you are, some people carry a lot with them and have heavy packs and don't mind carrying a little bit extra for the convenience and the comfort. And if you can't get comfortable in a gather-in hammock and you can't sleep well on the ground, maybe a bridge hammock is something to look into. And maybe that's the right choice for you. But it's not the right choice for everyone. Let's talk about weights for a second. So hammock body and the strap system that's on this is about 1 pound, 8 ounces. So a little bit heavy, but not bad, really. I mean, if you look at like a chameleon or something like that, you're looking about the same weight. It's about 1 pound for the hammock body, and then you add in about 8 ounces or so for the strap system. So pretty similar there, but where this one really steps up the weight is when you get to the spreader bars that are on either end. So the spreader bars add about 12 ounces to this system, taking it up to about 2 pounds 4 ounces, 2 pounds 5 ounces, depending on the scale you use it on. So now you've bumped up the weight considerably. If we're talking about the difference between a tent and a hammock, you know, you've got to combine both the tent or the tarp and the hammock to get to the same system that you would have for a tent. And so now you're looking at probably a minimum of 3.5 pounds because you've got to use a little bit wider. You can see here that as I'm sitting in here, it is hitting this side of the tarp. Now, while you're laying in here and it's flat, that's not a problem. And this is the reason I added the bumpers, or my homemade bumpers, to this system so that I don't have any worry of any metal with maybe any little sharp little piece hitting my tarp and risking ripping it. Even on the foot end where it's a little bit narrower, it's still touching the tarp. And this is a membrane fabric tarp. People have had issues with snags on this and it ripping, tearing pretty easily. I haven't had any problems with it yet, and I'll continue to use it. But this is my widest tarp, and I've got it tarped out pretty wide on the other side, and then in porch mode on this side. And you can see that I can still, when I'm sitting in here, it still hits. So you've got those. There are some options though. Options to lighten this thing up a little bit. So actually, I'm sorry, I said this one was 1 pound, 8 ounces. It's not. Okay, so for weights on this system, this being the double layer, we're looking at 1 pound, 10.5 ounces for the hammock and the straps. You can take about 2.5 to 3 ounces off if you go with a single layer, but then you're still looking at that 12 ounces on the spreader bars. So how do we cut that down? There are some options to cut the weight down a little bit. Now those options are going to cost you. So there is an option where you can use trekking poles. Now right now I'm using my trekking poles to put this in porch mode. So you'd have to find, if you really enjoy porch mode, you'd have to find another way to do porch mode, maybe set up so that there's trees around that you could use, or figure out some other system to get it into porch mode. But you can use trekking poles if you have the right type of trekking poles and you get adapters. So the trekking poles that they recommend, there are really two that I've seen out there. One's from Mountain Smith and one's from Comperdale, but they are essentially monopod for a camera. So they have the 1/2 inch 20 thread that you can, most of them have like a ball or something that screws on to protect the threads, but you can screw that off, and there's an adapter that you can screw on that is the same end as the spreader bars that are on here now. You can thread that on, and then there's a piece that goes over the tip end of your trekking pole that fits in. And so you can adjust your trekking poles to the right amount, to the right length. You probably want to figure that out ahead of time and maybe mark it with some paint or something so that you know exactly where you're going to be positioning your trekking poles to get the right spread on both ends. So there's that option, or there are companies out there that make carbon fiber replacement spreader bars, and they are about half the weight, if not a little bit less than half the weight of the standard spreader bar solution. So there are options out there. It will lower the weight a little bit. I think if you could find a way to do the trekking pole solution, I think that's a great way to do it. Let's take a look at the suspension that comes with this. Now, it's available with two different suspensions, webbing and whoopies, or webbing straps with the cinch buckle kind of setup. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so the suspension really starts at the hammock, and you have this piece here, which I've covered with the bumper, and you have a lark's headed on strap here. It's actually buried. There's about 3 inches, maybe 4 inches of bury right here. And then it comes up and it forms the triangle at the end here that goes out to the spreader bar. Now it comes up to this little triangle piece here, which is kind of the integrator between the continuous loop and whatever suspension system you have. Now for this one, these are these two, the two rings that form a real, cinch buckle type system, where if you pull it this way, you can really make the adjustments or adjust it. I don't have this weighted right now, so it's kind of hard one-handed. And then it comes up, and the strap system on the tree uses a carabiner to go around the tree and connect it really quickly. Now, because you can opt to just get it with this continuous loop and no system here, you can either go with a system like this or a set of whoopies that connect here that give you a little bit more adjustment. However, I've found throughout the years that I'm not a huge fan of the whoopies, and really this system here is a little bit overkill for what I do. I would still use this entire hammock with just my my normal strap setup and use a Beckett hitch right onto this continuous loop. Maybe even do away with this here and just do a continuous loop onto the end so there's no hardware, and just Beckett hitch it just like I would any other hammock. So really no difference in the types of suspension you can use. You could use any type of suspension that really works for you for this. What you will notice though is I've got this one set up pretty close to a 30 in this end. It's a little bit less over there, but really closer to a 20 is where you want to be on the suspension. So I could tighten this up a little bit, and that might get me a little bit flatter lay even than what I had in here right now. But altogether, this is a great hammock. You can see here the saddlebags, and they're shaped kind of interestingly, where they're deeper here, more shallow, and then a little bit of depth there at the end. But you can really drop stuff in there, and you've got one on either side, so there's quite a bit of storage. Now, one thing you will notice is that when you look inside, there is no ridgeline inside. So something like the Ridgeline media system, it's going to be difficult to use in here. You'll have to set something up. I know that Eric Johnson, the owner and inventor of the Hang Time hook, has come up with some solutions for that for this hammock, because this is the hammock that he likes to use. He enjoys the flat lay of this Ridgerunner. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this today. I hope you learned something about this hammock. This is the Warbonnet Ridgerunner bridge hammock. I haven't used a lot of bridge hammocks out there. The ones that I have used, one of them was really good and one of them had a lot of shoulder squeeze. And I've tried out a couple of other ones at hangs, specifically HangCon, that all kind of had a lot of shoulder squeeze, and that just didn't really, it wasn't something that enticed me to want to get into it. But I'd heard so many good things, and I know quite a few people that just rave about the Ridgerunner, and there was still some reluctance because of the huge community that loves the Blackbird XLC, and I just did not really enjoy that hammock. But I wanted to give this one a shot. So many people I really respect love this hammock that I wanted to get out there and try it out. Jordan Wright was gracious enough to send me this to test out, try out. And so I've been playing with it. I've been laying in it, and I've got to tell you, it is extremely comfortable. It is not probably most people's first choice for a backpacking hammock, although there are options to lower that weight a little bit so that you can get out there and enjoy the flatter lay, what may be a little bit more comfortable for you out on the trail if that's what's keeping you from getting out there. This is probably the flattest I've ever laid in a hammock. Like I said, I'm taking it out this upcoming weekend. Rain Man and I are gonna go out, hopefully not bringing the rain this time, and I'm gonna get some good nights out on the trail sleeping in this, and I will report back what I found, what I like, what I dislike. The one thing that I will say I wish Warbonnet changed was there's one set of zippers on here. So what that means is you can only access outside one side of the hammock at a time. So you've got zippers that you position where you want. So if I'm exiting in and out of this side, they can only be on this side. If I wanted to get something out of the other side, I would have to unzip it all the way around to do that, or get out this side, walk around to the other side to get what I want. It'd be cool if the zippers terminated at one end and they had double zippers on each side, so that you could then position zippers on either side and be able to access in and out both sides. Would that add weight to it? This much. It would add this much weight to it. Not a lot. And when you're considering that most people are using this as a car camping hammock, because of the spreader bars and the weight that they bring, I don't think that's much to add at all. So that's my one suggestion out to Warbonnet. Think about that. I think it adds a little bit of functionality that a lot of people would really enjoy. Maybe I'm thinking about it wrong. If you guys have a different opinion, or if you guys know of things that you would like to see added, changed, throw them in the comments down below. I appreciate you guys checking in with me today. I hope you learned something from this. I will see you guys down the trail.